Welcome back. Last spring, Grey Gardens enjoyed a sold-out run off-Broadway at Playwrights Horizons. This fall, the musical, based on the documentary about two eccentric relatives of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis living in squalor in their East Hampton mansion, made the move to the Great White Way, but not without a good deal of tweaking. Contributing correspondent Patrick Pacheco recently sat down with Grey Gardens composer Scott Frankel and lyricist Michael Korie to talk about the journey to Broadway. But before we bring you that interview, here's a look at two scenes from Grey Gardens. The first, set in 1941, features Christine Ebersol playing socialite Edith Bouvier-Beale and Erin Davie playing her daughter, Little Edie. The second scene jumps ahead to 1973, darker days for the Beales, with Christine Ebersol now playing the grown-up Little Edie, living with her elderly mother, portrayed by Mary Louise Wilson.
We're an act like Crosby and Hope, a rosy complexion and ivory soap. Pip and Miss Estella, Hedda and Luella, two peas in a pod.
I'll probably be an old maid until I die. I'll sit around with cats the rest of my life.
When are you gonna learn, Edie? You're in this world, you know. You're not out of the world. The days are gone when money grew on trees. The money tree came down with elm disease. But if my age talks for my $2, I'll eat the cake I have.
I'm delighted to welcome to On Stage Scott Frankel, the composer, and Michael Korie, the lyricist of Grey Gardens. He wrote those fantastic songs, and congratulations, and it's doing really, really well. I saw it in both incarnations. I saw off-Broadway, and then I obviously saw it on Broadway as well. And you achieved what a lot of people call turning a battleship around in a bathtub. It was about 70% there. It had a crucial 30% to go. You made these changes, and fairly extensive, almost unprecedented changes. You threw out 4 songs, wrote 3 new ones.
Yeah.
That was pretty radical surgery as these things go. How did you kind of like navigate those changes?
I have to say our missing compatriot Doug Wright was who wrote the book was very, very vigilant in getting us to not be married to anything and to really streamline our storytelling. So we rolled up our sleeves and really did some major surgery on the first act and clarified some plot issues, clarified storytelling, and
Michael, was it tough to let go of those songs?
No, it really wasn't. Having watched them not work at Playwrights Horizons, it was a pleasure. But those were the moments I always had to walk out.
Now, how did you know they didn't work and it wasn't something else that wasn't working? The book before it or
comes
after?
From watching the audience, and you experience what the audience is feeling. It's often different from night to night, but you just get that audience zeitgeist, and you feel whether it's working or not. You hear the coughs.
sometimes you know whether the audience is ahead of you in terms of the storytelling. Sometimes you maybe are hitting them over the head. They've already gotten the point and they're impatient. It's like treading water. So there's stuff, we mostly know what we're doing, but there's stuff you never really know till you see it in front of an audience.
And there's things that we figure out ourselves early on, but the economics of doing musicals, you do a musical off Broadway, we were very lucky to have such a beautiful production, but we spent every penny we had, and to redo new songs, reorchestrate, there's no budget for that kind of thing.
We had a very public out-of-town tryout in New York.
Very public. I mean, we were talking a little earlier, in old days you would go out of town, maybe Elliot Norton would write a review for the Boston Herald. When you were out of town, you would have that. Now, you've got everybody, you've got reviews, but you also have the internet. You have Talkin' Broadway and all sorts of lists. Did you actually log on to Talking Broadway and hear what was going on during the Playwrights Horizons days?
During Playwrights Horizons, the first night.
And was that confusing or helpful?
I learned my lesson by fire.
Well, you know, I did too, and I kind of made myself not do it for this latest incarnation. I mean, we've considered almost everything that's inevitably going to be discussed on those chat room boards, and so we're not unaware of the possible outcomes or the possibilities. It's just a question of, I mean, the thing about musicals too is it's like a jigsaw puzzle. If you change one piece or change the ingredients or the equilibrium, it shifts the whole balance of the evening. So an incremental change, replacing one song, may have a ripple effect or a scene or a cast member, or it's hard to know how much is doing what. So
Yeah.
There are better ways to gauge audience reaction. I mean, you know, when you write an email sometimes and you hit send and you wish you hadn't because it comes so easily. I think there's a lot of the stuff on Talking Broadway is like that. But when you speak to these people in person and they come up to you and say, why did you do something? That's a much more useful thing, and I know who I'm talking to, and you can gauge.
Right, and there's also a sense that this particular piece of property is very proprietary. People are very proprietary about these characters from the documentary. Did you sense that as well? That people were saying, how dare you do this?
Absolutely. I mean, people have really rabid, the people who are incredible fans who have seen it 10 and 20 and 30 times the documentary, they know it line for line, and they're religiously involved with those characters as if they're almost their own family. And so when you start tinkering with them, but on the other hand, our task was so daunting because I don't think a documentary's ever been adapted to a musical. So when you use that as source material, it's not immediately clear what kind of two-act structure or what kind of dramatic arc an evening you could have from that. So we needed to make the piece our own and reinvent it for the stage.
There was also a major cast change. Sarah Gettelfinger, who's terrific, a very talented actress, and was great in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, played the young Edie in the first go-around. She wasn't there. It was replaced by Erin D-A-V-I-A. That must have been a tough decision.
It was very difficult. I think Sarah is so beautiful and with a spectacular voice and was with us from the very beginning. And I think there was a feeling among our producers in particular that in helping bridge the gap between the acts, the fact that the first act takes place in the 40s and the second act takes place in the 70s, they were hoping to find an actress who had a closer physical resemblance to Christine.
She's shorter and smaller.
And fairer and kind of has visually is more reminiscent of Christine. So people thought that that would help bridge how this girl, telling the story of this girl and how she grew up to be this woman.
In the time that we have left, we're just wrapping up here. To what extent were you just out there on a wing and a prayer, and to what extent did you feel confident as you were taking these steps?
I always knew that it was a great story and that there was something universal, even though they were American royalty and Jackie was the most famous woman in the world and they were her cousin and aunt. I always knew that there was something in the mother-daughter story that resonated with people, that people saw elements of their own life in that conflict.
And it wasn't a freak show, it was actually something that you
Correct, that despite their Baroque trappings and despite the fact they were eccentric women in extreme circumstances, underneath it all, that relationship was still very universal.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming. Congratulations. Terrific show. I've enjoyed it tremendously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you can catch Grey Gardens on Broadway at the Walter Kerr Theater.